Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest, and he's back.
Yes, indeed.
Andrew Yang. Welcome back, sir.
It's great to be back. Thank you for having me.
Now, what are you drinking there? I see.
It's like one of those pomegranate teas from Pret. I'm a sucker for anything that says it has antioxidants. I'm like, ooh, healthy.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Our guy, Nick, he commented on your math pen.
Yes, make America think harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Which I said is almost impossible with social media.
And I said it's an uphill climb, but we can do it. We must do it.
Why do you think that just thinking, especially just cognitive dissonance skills is done nowadays?
Well, to me, what's frustrating is that we're not digging into why Donald Trump won in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the reason he won is that we blasted away so many manufacturing jobs in the Midwest, and now we're doing the same thing to retail jobs and call center jobs and truck driving jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to beat him, you got to solve the problems that got him into office, and that's what the Make America Think Harder is about, is that we're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in history, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. We got to focus on that and less on the tweet of the day.
How do we slow that down? How do we defeat that?
Well, it's a tough thing to slow down because if you look at, for example, malls and stores in the United States, 30% of malls and stores are closing because Amazon is soaking up $20 billion in value every year.
I can go online in order instead of leaving my house.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so you don't think of it as robots closing the malls because it's not like a robot walked into the mall and started taking your order.
If it was the actual Terminator who started blowing shit up and causing people not to have jobs.
Yeah, but if you go to the Amazon fulfillment center, then it's wall-to-wall robots. And so are you going to regulate away robots in fulfillment centers? I mean, that's a very tricky thing. To me, the best path is to actually have us all share in the gains of the 21st century economy, because right now we're just getting pushed down and pushed to the side. So as you all know, my flagship proposal is every American adult gets $1,000 a month starting at age 18 till the day we die. And that would make us all shareholders and owners of the 21st century economy.
And you've tried that on some families, right?
Yes, I've been giving some cash away.
How much did you give out so far?
You didn't try it on the Casey family. What about the McKelvey family?
Yeah, it's we got to go to yang2020.com and then get a little lucky. But we've been giving $1,000 a month to a dozen or so families around the country for a number of months. One family has been getting it for 11 months. Another family just started getting it this month. But I got to say, very consistently, you get cash money in your hands and good things happen. You know, you get healthier, less stressed out, mentally healthier. Your outlook improves. We've had people, do everything from obviously repair their cars and go back to school and pay down their bills. But we had one person buy a guitar, and he's now playing shows for the first time in years. He had to sell his equipment because he's taking care of his mom who's recovering from cancer.
Wow.
So then he gets this dividend, he pays down a little bit, then he buys a new guitar, and then he's out there rocking out, and he seems like a new man because of it. So seeing how transformative $1,000 a month is in people's hands makes me want to do it for everyone. And that's what this campaign's about. Like people look at this, and I get it. You look up and say, hey, that literally seems too good to be true. But this was mainstream political wisdom in the 60s. Martin Luther King
Jr.
Yeah, he came out and said, the best solution to poverty is to abolish it directly through a guaranteed minimum income. And it is what he was fighting for when he was killed in 1968. So it seems far out, but we don't have a choice but to make this happen, given that right now more and more of us are getting pushed to the side. And this is before AI leaves the lab and starts ripping apart jobs in corporations around the country.
One of the biggest critiques people have of you is that, that's all you got. It's like you're a one-trick pony.
I got lots of tricks.
If you're not talking about giving away money,
I got lots of stuff.
If you're not talking about giving away money, you have nothing else to talk about.
I've got over 160 policies on my website. From everything from banning robocalls, because that stuff should be illegal. Like, why are we letting these companies harass us?
They said it was cut down. That still happens to me at least twice a day.
Oh, me too. And now the phone numbers look like your phone number, so you get confused for a second. You answer, like, am I calling myself? Like, ban robocalls, legalize weed. Like, it makes no sense to have that stuff be illegal in some parts of the country when in others it's legal, and it's a much more safe way to manage pain for people than a lot of the opiates that are out there that are killing people.
I'm gonna be honest with you. If people are voting for you because you're banning robocalls, we really got to make America think harder. Like that's it. Like that's all it takes.
Well, I mean, one of the things I'm about in the campaign is just trying to improve our lives, and there are ways that we can improve our lives, big and small. Big is rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy so that they work for us, build a trickle-up economy. I mean, that's like the big step. But why are we letting freaking companies harass us with robocalls? Why is it that drug prices go up and never down? Why is it that our schools don't work because we're pumping money into the schools and we're not giving it to the teachers where it would do some good, and we're not giving it to the people and families? 2/3 of our kids' educational outcomes are determined outside of the school. That's stress levels in the home, parental time spent with the kid, type of neighborhood, words read to the child when they're young. So if we want to help our kids learn, you'd actually give the parents and families money.
I agree with you. Let's lead with those instead of banning robocalls.
Yeah, you got it, man. That's what I'm about. I'm happy to lead with abolishing poverty.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people say that, getting rid of robots is going to hurt us more, because if you look at, like, let's say tractor trailer drivers, they can only work maybe 8-10 hours a day. Now you have these self-driven cars that can drive all day long.
All day, all night.
Could get there regardless, could get there faster, cheaper, and all that other stuff. So what do you say to those people? Same thing with like the Easy Pass. Easy Pass is another way. That's a robot that's really taking a lot of jobs. There's nobody at the tolls anymore. You just drive through. What happened to all those jobs?
Yeah, that's the key. We have to look out for ourselves first and foremost. We don't necessarily need to look out for jobs, if you know what I mean. Like if you were to say, hey, we need to protect the toll collector, then you never have Easy Pass. Most of us would agree that Easy Pass is probably a good thing, and saying that you can't have it just to make sure that toll collector had a job.
But thousands of toll collectors lost their jobs. I'm sure of it. But it saved traffic. It saves time.
Yeah, so what we have to do is we have to look out for that person who's losing their job at the toll booth or at the mall, or they're driving a truck and the truck's going to start driving itself in 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. If we look out for people, then we can actually celebrate progress instead of having people that are frankly frightened of it or angry about it, which is not unreasonable. Because if you get your job blasted away by, a robot truck, I mean, I'd be really angry too.
What do you think about, like, Donald Trump lied to all the coal miners and told them he was going to bring the coal factories back? What do you think about taking those people and actually teaching them something like code?
The tough part, Charlamagne, is that it doesn't work when you try and teach coal miners how to code. And when I looked at the independent studies on this, the success rates for government-funded retraining programs for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest had success rates of between 0 and 15%. So that's a fail. It's like, and the reality is, if you go to a truck stop with me and say, hey, we're going to retrain you guys, they'd be more likely to punch you in the face than sign a clipboard. No, I mean, being real. It's like, I've been to that truck stop.
But you're trying to help them, essentially.
Oh, so what we have to do is we have to say, look, we're going to invest in retraining and reeducation for Americans, and then expect it to work approximately 15% of the time, which is not a mass solution for tens of thousands of coal miners or other types of workers. And there was a program that tried to teach coal miners how to code, and it was a dud. It was a flop. So,
why was it a flop? Because they didn't want to learn, they didn't want to do it, or because the overlap between coal miner, the skills to be a coal miner, and the skills to be a coder was not high. But the big picture,
that was a great way of saying they just wasn't smart enough to learn how to code.
I want to make two really important points. Number one, we can't confuse economic value and human value. Mm-hmm. And so if someone was a coal miner and then you say, okay, we're going to turn you into a coder, you're supposing that person needs to have market value to have any value. And that should not be the case. Mm. Like that person has value regardless of whether or not the market says it's a good thing.
That's correct.
Number two, AI is going to be able to take over basic coding in like 5 to 10 years. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to turn you into a coder, guess what? My AI is going to come back and be able to do that too in not that long. So we have to actually change the rules of the race to something we can all win at. Like the race against the machine is a loser for more and more of us over time. Instead, we have to look around and say, we have value intrinsically because we're human beings. We're the owners and shareholders of this country. We can actually rewrite the rules so that it works for us, so that like my kid has value regardless of whether they're awesome at the SATs or whatever bullshit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we invented the SAT during World War II as a means to figure out which kids not to send to the front lines. And now we treat every year like it's wartime for our kids. I mean, that's how dark things are. We have to look up and say we have value independent of any of these numbers.
So what do you do with those coal miners then? Like, how do you, like, you can't lie to them and tell them you're bringing coal mines back to get them back to work. So what do you do to tell them that they're going to get work?
So the goal is to go to them and say, look, let's try and rebuild your community. For starters, we're going to put $1,000 a month into each of your hands. So if there's a town in West Virginia that has 10,000 adults, that's $10 million a month that goes right into local businesses. It gets spent on car repairs and daycare and Little League signups. And then each of those businesses ends up creating accessible jobs in that community because, the mechanic has to hire an assistant and the bar has to hire another server. So this is how you at least begin to provide a runway. And then the goal is to try and help people find opportunities that would work for them, either where they live or potentially in another market.
And everybody would get that $1,000. So if you win and Donald Trump loses, Donald Trump would get $1,000 a week, $1,000 a month.
If he signed up for it, which I'm sure he would, because we all know Donald Trump wants that $1,000 a month. But the way I pay for it is by creating a mechanism that sets a toll on the winners of the 21st century economy, which would be Amazon, Google, Facebook, and some of the Trump businesses. So someone like Trump would end up paying millions and millions into the system. And if we then try and send him $1,000 a month, it's trivial for us. The example I use is Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is now worth $120 billion post-divorce. And so if I set the tax rate to like 60, 70, 80%, how much of his $120 billion am I going to get? Next to none of it. Because he's not dumb enough to pay himself billions of dollars a year and get taxed on it. Most of his money is tied up in Amazon stock. How much is his $1 trillion company, Amazon, paying in taxes every year?
Nothing.
Zero,
right.
So that's what you have to change. You have to go where the money is and say, look, we're going to take a toll on the Amazon sales, get hundreds of millions, billions of dollars from the Jeffs of the world. And then if he gets his $1,000 a month, then we don't care.
Let's talk about your polling averages. Nationally, you're right around 2%. So for supporters who think we got too many people in the race, what's your case to them that you still have a path to victory?
I'm one of the only campaigns that's been growing every single day. Really, my campaign raised $10 million last quarter in increments of only $30 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's, but I got a lot of them. And we're one of the true growth stories. We're polling at 5% in New Hampshire. We just put a 7-figure ad buy up in Iowa. The Yang Gang is growing all the time. We already qualified for the November debates. We're going to be there in the December debates. The field is shrinking. And as the field shrinks, more and more attention is getting paid to me in this campaign because I'm trying to solve the problems that got Donald Trump elected. And because of that, I'm peeling off Trump supporters, independents, libertarians. I can build a much broader coalition to beat Donald Trump in 2020 than any of the other candidates.
What do you think about it? What do you think about Trump's impeachment?
I'm for impeachment, but facing facts, not a single Republican crossed party lines to vote for impeachment, which means it's going to flounder in the Senate, and then he's going to declare victory. And every moment we're talking about impeaching Donald Trump or Donald Trump in any context, we are not creating a positive vision for the country for Americans to get excited about. And so if we go into this election and it's all about Donald Trump, we're going to lose again.
Wow. So you say you haven't made a December debate yet?
Right. Oh, I'll be there. I mean, heck, we could be there today or tomorrow. We already have the donors and we're halfway in the polls.
If you don't, though, when do you say enough is enough?
I'm going to be here the whole way, man. I don't have another.
We've heard that before.
Oh, no. Who'd you hear that from?
Beto O'Rourke. He said it here on a Thursday and quit on a Friday. He literally was here on a Thursday, and then he quit the very next day.
I was literally like a block away from him when he was giving his farewell speech. I didn't realize it was happening at the time. Let's just say you can bank on the fact that Andrew Yang is going to be here the whole time. And if I'm not there when the voting starts in February, like you can play this back to me over and over again, but I'm not going anywhere. We're growing and growing when other people are dropping out. There's no reason for me to go anywhere.
If you did drop out, hypothetically, which you said you won't, would you endorse anybody? Is there anybody that's running now that you would endorse?
There are people that I have, very positive feelings about in the field, but like the goal has to be to beat Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to endorse someone and then feel like I might be putting my finger on the scales of the process. I'm open to supporting the nominee, whoever that is.
What do you think about Mayor Bloomberg and Deval Patrick potentially
So
joining the race
interesting.
this late in the game?
Especially Bloomberg. Holy cow. It's like such a
he was
fun
waiting for this
test
one. He's
case.
like, I'm going to let y'all just fall out, play with each other, and then I'm going to hop in.
I mean, check it out. This guy's worth $50 billion. He can essentially do anything that money can buy. And so we're about to see what it's like to run for president with unlimited resources. And and a lot of savvy. I mean, he's got a lot of smart people around him. So I'm just really interested in it. When people come into the field, it's frankly good for someone like me because I do better if it's a fragmented field. And living here in New York, I mean, it's like I understand what Mike brings to the table more than a lot of Americans. His name recognition's not that high in other parts of the country.
Do you think it's insulting to the candidates that are running, though, for Bloomberg to be like, you know what? None of these guys and gals are doing a good job.
They're
Let
not
me
doing
jump
good
in.
enough.
The historical precedence for people jumping in late is not pretty. Let's put it that way. Like if you jump in late, things don't go well for you. and that's just historical fact. So
What was your first thought when you saw it? Your very first thought when you saw Bloomberg maybe jumping in the race?
my very first thought was that the price of advertising is about to go up.
He's like, this rich bastard, damn it.
You've already got a billionaire running, though. You got Steyer.
Yeah, I mean, Steyer's been pumping the airwaves, and he's also driven up the cost of advertising in some ways. But Steyer's a poor billionaire compared to Bloomberg. I mean,
how are you a poor billionaire? Goodness gracious.
The truth,
seriously,
though.
man. No, I think Steyer might be worth like 1.6 billion.
Yeah.
And then Bloomberg's worth 50 billion. So it's like I'm worth like 30 top Steyers is what I mean. Bloomberg has nearly unlimited resources. It's very, very interesting.
Right.
I didn't realize ads go up based off.
Yeah, they do.
Really?
Yeah,
Explain that.
Particularly in the digital competition. So let's say I'm Tom Steyer and I want to get someone who's like an undecided voter in New Hampshire. Then I'll pay a certain amount on Google or YouTube to get that person. And then if Andrew Yang wants to get that person, I have to outbid Tom Steyer, which is actually kind of tricky because like that rate has gone up and up. So it 100% affects the price of ads online. And it even at the margins affects the price of ads on TV. Though most of the time on TV, there's enough inventory where your prices won't go up. But at the extremes, it can actually raise those prices too.
What do we think about billionaires, man? And the reason I say this, right? Like, I understand what Elizabeth Warren wants to do. But if somebody has earned their money, like, why should we just be taking it from them just because they got too much? And
if they die and they give it to their kids, why do they get taxed again? Because you already taxed me once. So now when I give it to my kids, they get taxed?
Wow, you guys are asking some interesting questions on this. Our economy is a winner-take-all economy of unprecedented extremes. And if you've got an ultra-extreme economy, then you end up with some billionaires. Now, it's hard to go back in time and say, hey, it's the billionaires' fault because the system has been screwed up for decades, and there are going to be some people who wind up at the top of that system.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do we now want to come together and say, hey, we need to create a new way forward that actually works for non-billionaires? Yes. Do I think it's necessary to demonize people who were at the top of the system? No, because some of them got there by doing something that most of us are kind of excited about. You know, like I mean, who's the billionaire that we're most like Oprah? I mean, shoot, like freaking Oprah became
Robert Smith. I mean, for me as a black man, I look at them. You know, Oprah, Robert Smith, Michael Jordan.
Yeah, like the people who became billionaires and stuff that we all actually kind of love and are excited about. You know, like creating a voice for African Americans in the media, like Robert Smith Johnson.
Robert Smith.
You're
talking about Bob Johnson, but there's a Robert Johnson.
No wonder I got confused there.
Well, it's too. Bob Johnson created BET, but
BET.
Robert Smith is a venture capitalist.
Yeah, so I was thinking Bob Johnson. Yeah, so they're billionaires that most of us look up and say, you know, Michael Jordan's a billionaire. Sure, he probably should be a billionaire. You know?
Right.
It's like not on him.
So what about guys like Steve Jobs? I mean, look like you just said, A lot of coal miners, they not smart enough to code. Steve know how to code.
But this is the thing, is that, again, human worth and, like, quote unquote smart, like, don't have a relationship, really. Like, one of my sons
I get what you're saying.
One of my sons is autistic. Does that mean that he's worth less than other human beings? Like, of course not. You know, it's like we have to do right by families. And I will say that if you look at the people that get bludgeoned the worst by this market mentality that we're worth what the market says we're worth, it's black people, it's people of color, it's women, it's people that get systematically marginalized and pushed to the side by a fundamentally super capitalist marketplace.
You're right, but can't you change the market with this? Like, if you have an idea that is a multi-billion-dollar idea and you become a billionaire from it, is that your fault?
Oh, and so again, man, I'm not down on the fact that there ought to be no limit to what we can achieve within a market-based economy, but we also have to grow up in terms of what we think of as both market value and human value. So one of the things I'm fighting for in this campaign is that GDP is at record highs right now. Corporate profits are at record highs, but also at record highs right now, stress levels, student loan debt, financial insecurity, even suicides and drug overdoses, all at record highs or multi-decade highs. So if your life expectancy is going down and your corporate profits are going up, something has to give, you know? And so what I'm saying is, instead of measuring our economy through corporate profits and GDP, we should be measuring it by how healthy our kids are, how clean our air and water are, our mental health and freedom from substance abuse. Like, on those things, if those things got better, then we'd actually be happy. Right now, the capital efficiency machine is grinding us up because we're saying, hey, like, top line, like, you know, corporate profits, revenue growth is supposed to be good for us, but it's not good for us anymore.
Yeah, but we got to fix a lot of that. Like you mentioned earlier, Amazon paying no taxes, right?
Yeah, it's messed
Amazon
up.
paying no taxes, you know, billion-dollar company. But then you say somebody like, let's say, I'll use Charlamagne, for example, came from South Carolina, grinded it up. He's finally making money, and then you're taxing him 45%. He can't. It's hard for him to create generational wealth because you're taxing him so much money. But somebody like a Donald Trump, who can get a loan from his dad for $1 million, that generational wealth is always there. They know how to beat the system.
I don't like you using me as an example. The IRS is looking at you too, sir. Don't just put the finger at me. I'm the only person in here getting taxed. Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Jesus.
But you know what do you do to fix that? Because there's so many immigrants that are first time making money, but you're taxing them so much, and then we look at somebody like Amazon that gets taxed nothing.
That's exactly what we need to fix. You know, I tell a joke. You know, there's this robber that got asked, like, why do you rob banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. Mm-hmm. We got to go to where the money is. And the money is not in the town dentist or the child of immigrants who's striving to get ahead. It's with the Amazons and Googles and Facebooks and Ubers, like these literally $1 trillion companies that are paying zero or near zero in taxes.
So if I'm a billionaire, I'm like Andrew Yang wants people to rob me. What about human value, Yang? They don't deserve to get robbed.
You know what's
Not robbed, but
wild?
tax them something.
He said robbed.
No, I'm saying tax their businesses and tax the winners of the 21st century economy. And here's the thing. I've been endorsed by Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey and a lot of the people that theoretically you would think like might not be down, because they agree with me that this is actually just better for innovation and progress on the whole if people feel like they have a stake. You know, like people are not just economic, you know, optimizers. I mean, people are parents and Americans and have families and like that. You know, they look around and say this system's messed up. So it's not like there aren't. Let's just say there are some billionaires that are down with the Yang plan.
Right. Would you lean on them to do what you're doing? Meaning, like, you know, you started with the universal basic income. You started coming out your pocket and paying families.
Yep.
So would you tell Elon Musk and those guys, like, hey, use some of your money to, you know, help some people in need?
I'm happy to say that there are a couple of people that right now are following that example and just trying to give families money. Some of them actually reached out to me and said, hey, Andrew, like, I'll give people money through your campaign. I'll give 10 families $12,000 a month. And you know, the only reason they couldn't do it was because it might break a campaign finance rule, because it might look like they were giving the campaign $120,000 in services that they just gave the money to 10 families. And that made me so mad because I was like, are you kidding me? Like, some human being wants to help other human beings and just show that we don't have to live with this boot on our throats, and they can't do it because of some bullshit campaign finance rule. Like, that made me so angry.
All right.
Anyway, that's one reason why, you know, like, I was doing it out of pocket, because like that was the cleanest way Because I know we could look. It's like, look, I'm a private citizen. I'm giving another private citizen $1,000 a month. Like, there's no rule against it.
Right.
And but when someone else wanted to do it, then the lawyers were like, hey, this might be a campaign finance violation.
Now, you mentioned earlier, you talked about weed and legalizing weed across the board because you said it was legal in a couple of states. Do you feel that we should start governing like that? Like, if it's legal one place, it's legal all over the country?
Well, I'm for rules that make sense, I'm for rules that work. So
because I never understood that. Why would it be legal in Denver and legal in Detroit and legal here, but not anywhere else? The same thing with guns, though. Like, you can carry guns in Texas, the same gun you carry in New York,
federal laws and state laws.
you're getting 3 years.
Yeah, I'm for rules that make sense across the board whenever possible. And if something's legal in a particular part of the country, then that's at least a signal that maybe we should examine our national approach to it. So to me, weed being legal in some places is a sign, and we all see where the wind's blowing. It's like we all know we're heading towards legalization over time, so we might as well just get with the program. But I would take the next step too. I would pardon everyone who's in jail for a nonviolent pot-related offense. I'd pardon them all and say, like, hey, like, April 20th, 2021, like, get out of jail, hey. And then they'll be like, wow, things have changed since I went in. There's an Asian president. He just freaking pardoned me, high-fived me on the way out of jail, and I get $1,000 a month. It's like Monopoly, but in real life.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think your candidacy means to Asian Americans?
Hopefully they're pumped about it. I mean, I'm Asian American, obviously, and like my friends and families. Not all my friends, obviously, but I've got Asian friends. And they're into it. That'd be funny if I did it. I'd be like the wackest Asian guy ever, being like, oh, what is this food? Anyway, so I'm proud of being the first Asian American man to run for president as a Democrat. And when I see Asian Americans around the country, they're generally excited too, and hopefully I'm doing the community proud. I've
seen you get a little pushback though around the way you've talked about Asian Americans and math, for example, as a part of your identity. Why have you chosen to embrace like certain stereotypes about Asian Americans?
I think that these myths become weaker if you drag them into the light and make light of them. And I think Americans are smart and savvy enough to recognize both a myth and a joke when they see it. And I found it useful as a way to break the ice with certain groups because, it's like if I can make fun of myself, then they feel more comfortable with the fact that I'm just a person and I'm, motivated by very human reasons.
How can you win black voters? Because, like the black vote is very important this year, like especially in places like South Carolina where the primary is over 60% black.
Yeah, we have to get the message out to black voters in particular that we need to do better by people of color in particular, because right now these automation trends that I'm so worried about are going to impact black people the hardest. There was one study that said, and I said this last time I was here, that African American median net worth is going to be 0 in 2053 because of the fact we're going to get rid of a lot of the most common jobs. And if you think of a natural disaster, who suffers the most? Black people, communities of color, people that don't have cars to drive away in. And the same is going to be true of this economic natural disaster that's coming. That, to me, it's going to be black people that lead the way, in part because black people see that we need to humanize the economy as quickly as possible and give our kids a fighting chance.
I could agree with all of that, but how do we get the black community to vote not out of fear, but because you're actually going to do something for them?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is the further I go, the more people think I can win, and then I'll get more support. Because I get it. Like early on, you'd be like, okay, this guy's saying some things I agree with, but can he contend? Can he win? But I'm still here growing when like half a dozen senators and governors are already out of the race. Like when the debates go on, you'll still see this guy. And if enough of us get together, we can actually make the big changes at the top. We can't nibble at the margins. We've been nibbling. We actually haven't even been nibbling successfully for the last 30, 40, 50 years. And the debt has grown, and it's time to pay it off.
I know you think you can beat Trump because of your legislation you want to pass and your policies and stuff like that. But one-liners, bro. You're going to need some real witty one-liners if you go head-to-head with Trump.
No, I think I can beat Trump for a whole host of reasons. One, I'm focused on solving the problems that got him elected. But two, most of his attacks work best against career politicians. You know what I mean?
Smart.
Like if you look up and he's going to be like, oh, drain the swamp, build the system. It's like everyone knows that I'm the Asian entrepreneur who came out of nowhere. You know, it's like I'm an outsider, sort of like he pretended to be. And the people sense it too. That's one reason why I've gotten tens, even hundreds of thousands of Trump voters supporting me and looking at my campaign, because they've given up on government as actually being able to solve problems. So they went in for Trump. And then here I am saying some of the same things, being like, look, you're right. Government has failed us, the people, for decades. And it's time to rewrite the rules so they work for us. And I don't owe anyone a damn thing except the Yang Gangers who've given $30 to my campaign. I have no corporate PAC money, like no lobbyists. And a lot of Trump voters look up and say, oh my gosh, this is kind of what I was hoping for when I went for Trump. But a lot of those people now realize that they got duped by Trump. And so they see Yang coming and they're like, yes, this is the guy. So I'm his kryptonite / nemesis in a lot of ways.
I think Trump will flip it on you this time, and I'll tell you why. He's a hypocrite. We know that. He contradicts himself all the time.
Yeah.
So what he'll do is use your lack of experience against you. And he'll be like, this guy has no experience. He's never ran for any public office. He'll flip it totally. And I think his people will buy it.
You know, I don't think his people crave legislative experience. I mean, that hasn't been my experience talking to Trump voters.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been joking on the team what his nickname for me will be, and we came up with Comrade Yang.
Comrade Yang.
Why
Because
Comrade Yang?
It's a little racist. It's a little, communist, socialist, that sort of thing. But we joke about it because, again, most of his attacks aren't going to work as well on me. I'm the outsider that many people hoped for when they voted for him in the first place.
So what's your nickname for him? And that's why I asked you about one-liners, because you're going to have him against old Trumpy boy, baby. What's the liners?
I mean, to me, I think
You got a nickname for him in the talk.
Well,
I know you do.
Well, the nickname primed and ready, but a lot of it is just responding with both truth and humor. It's so one of the problems for Democrats is they get indignant. It's like Trump says something and then you'd be like, that's horrible. And for me, like, I just laugh at him, just like most Americans laugh at him. The 1,000th verification that Donald Trump is Donald Trump is not worth getting shocked over. Like, at this point, you just move him out of the way and say, all right, let's start solving problems and move forward.
Yeah, I don't care about.
I feel like you got some one-liners for him.
But please, I mean, if you got something.
No, I know. Listen, Andrew Yang says little things that I hear, and when he says things like, I have a joke, this, and he's just be talking about other stuff, I know he got jokes in the tuck for Trump. I know he do. I know you got a sense of humor.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
So you got something on
Even when I saw you defend the dude from SNL, and you was like, yo, he shouldn't get fired, that let me know you understand humor.
Yeah, I didn't think he should get fired. Of course, he got fired anyway.
He got fired. He got fired.
But I watched some of his work with my wife, and I was like, this guy does not seem like an evil racist to me. He just seems like a comedian from central Pennsylvania who told some bad jokes, and here we are.
Right.
And you joke on yourself.
And I joke on myself. So I was like, if I'm literally the person he called a chink, and I don't think he should be fired, then, I should probably say something.
Yeah. Andrew Yang.
Well, Andrew Yang, we appreciate you for joining us.
Give me your website and all of that so they can continue to donate.
Thank you. It's yang2020.com. And we're going to go really, really far, even all the way in this race. So thank you. It's great to be back with you all. But we need to rewrite the rules of the economy so that it works for us and our kids.
Oh, hold on. Let's talk about Medicare-for-all for a little while. You got some time?
Sure.
Okay. Now, you've pushed back against Senator Warren's Medicare-for-all plan. Why?
Well, I'm for Medicare-for-all because we can't have healthcare just breaking the backs of families and businesses. But the two things I would differ with Senator Warren's plan is, number one, I would not get rid of private insurance wholesale. She's wrong that all Americans hate their insurance. Some Americans actually are cool with their insurance, and saying we're going to change it up on millions of Americans abruptly, to me, is not a winner. Number two, I think her funding mechanisms are somewhat overly optimistic. She just ratcheted up the wealth tax from 2% to 6%. And when a wealth tax was tried in France, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, all of them repealed it because it didn't generate as much money as they thought it would, and there were massive compliance problems. So if those countries and a half dozen other countries had that experience, I don't think the rich people in America are going to be any different than the rich people in Denmark, France. It's like, so I think our funding mechanisms are a bit unrealistic. But big picture, do we need to provide all Americans health care and make it so that we don't feel like we're going to get crushed by medical costs, or that we are stuck in jobs that we might not want to be in because we need the health coverage? 100% yes. Like, linking it to our jobs makes no sense in an era where 94% of new jobs are temp gig or contract jobs that don't have health care benefits anyway. And we're going to get rid of a lot of the most common jobs. So we need a different approach. I just would not get rid of private insurers all at once.
So what's your plan? What would your plan be?
So my plan is Medicare-for-all, with the goal of demonstrating to American consumers that this is a superior plan to whatever your private plan is, and then outcompete the private insurers and get them out of the system over time. But you have to demonstrate that value to the American consumer without saying we're going to get rid of your current offering.
Now, a lot of the plans on your website will require Congress to be aligned with you.
Yeah.
But what happens if you become president and we don't have Democratic majorities in the House and the Senate? What will you do as an executive, and what happens to plans like universal basic income when they can't get the votes?
Well,
what's your plan B?
Sure. This is the vision. I win Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, and then people are like, oh my gosh, like Yang is winning. Yang becomes the nominee. I beat Trump. And then the Democrats are so excited that when I say, look, the only reason I'm here is because of the freedom dividend. Let's get money into the hands of children and families, make people stronger and healthier. The Dems will be on board 100%. But the Republicans will actually look at it and say, wait a minute, do I hate the dividend? The one state that has had a dividend for almost 40 years is Alaska, and that was passed by a Republican governor in a deep red state. They don't hate the dividend. They actually kind of like the idea of people getting money directly to be able to make their own choices. And so I can get folks from who that represent rural areas and red states on the interior on board with the dividend, and I don't need 80%, I just need 51%.
Right.
Can you imagine we pass that dividend, the checks go out, the American people will be like, oh my gosh, like we did something that I actually love, and it's making us better, stronger, healthier. And then we'll look up and say, okay, Republicans, what else can we do that historically you've been on board with? Like,
and you won't tax
like
it, right? That money won't be taxed, right?
That money's not taxed.
Okay.
So this is actually the best way that we can bring the country together and start solving problems, because I'm a different type of politician. If we get someone else in office that's just going to continue the polarization, nothing's going to get done. But you put Yang in, there are a lot of Republicans who think that they can actually get on board with the dividend, because what they hate is giant bureaucracies making everyone's decisions. Yeah. They do not mind money in people's hands.
All right.
It's very interesting to me, man. I want to see you. I would love to see you in going up against Trump, just so I can know what this nickname is.
Yeah.
Well, why are you holding on to it?
Well, you know, like I'm holding on to like a dozen debate zingers for Trump and other people.
Just in case.
But if I bust them out in the Breakfast Club, then they're not zingers anymore. You know what I mean?
Why haven't you hit none of the other Democratic candidates with the zingers yet?
No, we got to wait until the field shrinks. I'm Mr. Positive until then.
Ooh. So when it gets down to about 4 or 5, all guns are blazing.
Yeah, wait and see. But yeah, like, you know, I mean, we have a game plan. We're sticking to it.
Okay. Well, it's Andrew Yang. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.